Hey everybody, this is Perch. Have you been going back through the old Perch catalog? That sounds weird and presumptuous to say, but there's a lot of videos on this channel. If you haven't noticed, there's several thousand at this point. So enough you could drown yourself in shitty audio and bad, boring commentary filled with somebody who can't often find his words. That's what you get from this channel. So if you are diving back into the Perch back catalog, there's a lot of material there, a lot of redundant topics, a lot of boring, middle of the road bullshit. But some people are. So let's see what they have to say. It says, hey, Perch, I've been thinking a lot about some of the older topics you've discussed on your channel. Those topics being continuity, relatability, and inclusivity. Inclusivity is a bit of a hard word to say. To me, none of these are bad things to have in a comic book. To me, the problem comes when marketability becomes the principal focus of the comic, despite working against the character's history or current storyline. The big two obviously having this the worst due to the fact they try and market to the wrong crowds or just incompetent marketing in general. I understand that marketability is important for a book to sell books. It becomes a detriment when it causes a character's history to be broken, ignored, introduce a character nobody likes or can relate to. Like to your thoughts. Have a good rest of your day. There's a PS here. PS, I guarantee your comment section is going to be full of people saying that continuity, relatability, inclusivity shouldn't be in comics. I swear some of your viewers either don't watch your videos at all or are as dumb as rocks. Well, um, in defense of those viewers, first of all, there's definitely some people who read the thumbnail and that's it. They don't actually watch anything, or they watch a very small amount of it, and then they just run with whatever's left there, and that's as far as it goes. Definitely that's the case for a few people. But the other thing, and it's important to recognize, because people ask me, some of the time, hey, what gives with this person's channel, or what gives with this person's comment? And the thing is, we have a hobby. I mean, the hobby in this case being YouTube, not actually comics, that is based on kind of knee-jerk reactions to things. It's been built that way, and I say so kind of not bitterly, but sadly, that there is a decent amount of people who, for lack of a better word, they're angry. They're angry because their hobby has changed on them. They're angry because they feel like they've been insulted. There's a number of reasons why they're angry. And they go to YouTube not to actually, listen to something, learn something, challenge themselves, any of that kind of stuff. They go to YouTube to have their comments reflected back at them, to have their feelings reflected. They're angry and they want to hear somebody else who is angry. And so, clever YouTubers have figured out that, easy money is making videos where you're like, this woke bullshit is woke and terrible, and this is the problem is these comic creators are insulting their customers and trying to basically spit in your face because you happen to be a Christian or Republican, and they're pursuing their woke agenda, and they're doing that in very kind of angry, breathy tones. Do they feel that way? Probably not, most of the people, but it reflects that anger back. And I mean, yes, sometimes life is as simple as you can boil it down to, some jackass is, pushing their political agenda on. There definitely are those people, like everything else. I've seen some people comment of like, yeah, this is the outrage crowd, the cancel culture, the culture war crowd. But there are people who are actually waking up every day, and their job is to poke and screw with people, and they're doing it both, on all sides of the equation. There are absolutely, people, whether they're serious or not, who think it's a good idea to go on Twitter and post, we're going to gay all your children. And they're going to, that for some reason is what that person woke up and decided to do. They woke up and they chose violence. That's now, is that really what they want to do? Who knows? But, it's stupid to post that. All you're going to do is generate fighting. But that's what they want to do. So anyway, it is the world it is. But to the point of the mail, we've gone all around. We talked more about the PS. Absolutely, it's about marketing and marketability and getting the comic out there. And I think it's this one truism that you keep coming back to, that I keep coming back to, which is it doesn't really matter what you're doing in the comic. whether it's diverse, not diverse at all, a comic about robots with no races at all, no genders or sexuality. It's about animals. It's about whatever. I was going to say, it's about Transformers, but they did find a way to wedge in, there's a gay Transformer and a trans Transformer. Like what, by the way, how is there a trans Transformer? I mean, aren't they all Transformers or none of them are? They're robots, for fuck's sake. What? Anyway. I mean, if an Autobot wakes up one morning and decides that it was born with the wrong gender, it's like it could just transform into a car and forget about it, right? I mean, what's even going on here? I don't understand. Anyway, no matter what you're doing in the comic, no matter whether it's super woke, not woke, whatever it happens to be, it needs a good story. If it fails at the story, it's gonna fail. And I think why you see a number of the culture war comics or the politically correct comics or whatever, or the comics that are trying to highlight in on inclusivity or diversity or things, the problem is that in a lot of cases, the people creating those books, are basically, they make the story subservient to whatever the kind of marketable agenda they think they're pulling off is. If you focus on the story first and then you put some of this stuff in, cool. I do think there is a logical argument to say, if you're doing a certain type of comic and you're putting that comic in a certain, I don't know, environment, a certain place in the country, a certain, whatever it happens to be, you're probably going to want some diverse characters in it because it's going to make more sense to the story. But the key there is to figure out your story, figure out something that is really powerful, will resonate with your customers and your readers, nail that. Then you figure out what elements support that goal. And sometimes those elements are going to lean toward diversity. Sometimes it's going to lean toward inclusion. Sometimes it's not. And if it doesn't, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Meaning, if you're doing a story about, and we'll get out of the Transformers, but if you're doing a GoBots comic, anybody remember GoBots? They were always the crappy Transformers. If you're doing a GoBots comic, then racial diversity shouldn't be on your mind. You're doing unless the GoBots are hanging out with humans, that's really not a factor in the story at all. Why would it be? In fact, including racial diversity in a GoBot story set in space is most likely going to get you in trouble. How? Because you're going to start to assign races to robots, and it's just going to come off as, at best, cringy, at worst, super racist. Sort of like how, in Star Wars at times they would give, some of the aliens kind of racial accents and things, and you're like, ugh, that doesn't sound right. That's where that leads. So the key is get a good story, market off that story. This is perhaps unfair, but just from my own perspective, whenever I see a comic being marketed through IGN or Kotaku or Gizmodo or one of these, when I see a comic and the comic article is all about, I don't know, things that have nothing to do with the comic, things that are like, in this comic, it was important that there were 4 black female characters in it. My automatic gut reaction is that comic probably sucks and has no story. Because if it had a great story and a great hook, they would have led with that. They would not have led with the demographics of the fictional characters inside the comic. It's just, and again, that may be an unfair assessment, and sometimes it is, but I'm always suspicious when a comic goes all in on things that have nothing to do with the actual story, and they lead with that in their marketing. It tells me that this comic probably has a pretty shoddy story. That's my reaction. Fair or unfair, that's always how it feels to me. So, to the point of your mail, yeah, it's about the story, stupid. It is always about the story. It cannot be about these other elements. And I do think that, to take it to the extreme in the other direction, if you had a comic where it was the same, 6 white people, all like straight, like let's defeat the aliens and then we're going to go bang some chicks. Yeah, banging chicks is tight. If that was the comic, that comic would probably suck as well. It would feel very one dimensional. It would feel like all the characters are the same. It would feel like a Brian Michael Bendis comic where all the characters sound exactly alike. You don't want that either. I do think diversity, inclusion, those topics, when combined with good storytelling, probably pretty good. That's probably a good option. But when diversity inclusion is combined with marketing and not a good story, it usually sucks because you're putting the emphasis on the wrong thing. I don't know. That's my take on it. So I think I agree with the person writing in this mail. It's a nuanced position, but I think it's a pretty important one. And unfortunately, for better or worse, for worse, we're at this knee-jerk reaction where if you just use the word inclusion, you've got a bunch of people who are automatically have a negative gut reaction to it. And they have that negative reaction, again, maybe some of them are racist, but not all of them. Some of them are, they've just learned that word is code for, I don't give a shit about the story. I just give a shit about the demographics of this comic. And, you're about to encounter something with subpar art, subpar story, but, a nice press release that, IGN might get excited about because it makes them feel like they're doing their part to be inclusive. And the goal of comics is not to make, websites feel good about themselves. The goal of the comics is to tell a good story. My opinion, anyway. Let me know how you disagree in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.